A good cheese scone should be crunchy on the outside, incredibly soft and fluffy on the inside, and filled with. These scones tick all those boxes, and bonus, they're quick and easy to make. Welcome to Recipes by Karina, where I share with you how to make classic and simply delicious recipes. Make sure to follow my page or subscribe for a new recipe each week. Start with your dry ingredients. In a large size mixing bowl, measure out your flour. You'll need 3 cups or 375 grams of standard or all-purpose flour. You'll notice I give the measurements in cups and grams, so no matter where you live in the world, you should find this recipe easy enough to follow. If you'd like the full recipe for these cheese scones, a printable or screenshot version will be on my website, as well as the full measurements listed in the description box below. Next, measure out 2 tablespoons of baking powder and add it to the bowl. It's a lot of baking powder, but it's how these scones are so light and fluffy. Make sure not to mix it up with baking soda here, or your scones will be so bitter and awful. It's an easy mistake, but makes a huge difference in the final product. Ever since I posted the recipe for English scones served with jam and cream, I've gotten so many questions and requests for how to make cheese scones. The recipes are pretty similar, with a few tweaks here and there. Let me know in the comments below which is your favourite, plain scones with jam and cream or cheese scones with butter. I would definitely be in team cheese. You really can't beat a good cheese scone. Finally, for the dry ingredients, add a good few pinches of salt, not too much here as the scones will get more salt from the cheese, as well as a 1/4 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. The cayenne pepper adds a wonderful kind of bite to the scones. They're definitely not spicy at all, so you don't need to worry about that, but only add more if you're a fan of some heat. Give the dry ingredients a good mix together with a wooden spoon before we move on to the remaining ingredients. Next, we'll need 60 grams, 1/4 cup, 4 tablespoons or half a stick of butter. Make sure your butter is straight out of the fridge for this recipe. We don't want any chance of it melting, so as cold as possible is best. Using a knife, cut the butter up into smaller pieces and add it to the bowl with the dry ingredients. Using clean, dry hands, work the butter into the flour with your fingertips. Alternatively, you can use a pastry cutter or a dough cutter, but it's so fast and easy with your hands. What we're doing here is getting all of the flour coated in the butter. This creates a kind of barrier around the flour, so when the scones are in the oven, the butter melts and it creates that fluffy, flaky texture that marks a really good scone. Doing this also helps prohibit gluten development in the flour, which is what stops the scones turning into more of a bread-like texture, which we don't want. If at any stage during this you can start to feel the butter melting, whether that's because you live in a hot climate or your fingertips are just too hot, place the whole bowl into the fridge for about 15 minutes. We really want the butter to be super cold here, so be careful of it melting. This recipe will make 6 large cheese scones or 8 smaller scones. If you'd like, you can easily halve the recipe to make 4 small or 3 large. The same goes for doubling if you have a lot more people to feed. Also, think of scones as a base recipe. There are so many different flavours you can add or keep them simple and delicious. A few favourites are bacon pieces, olives, jalapenos, sun-dried tomatoes, feta or caramelised onions. The options are pretty much endless. You can see here the kind of texture you want. A few smaller pieces of butter is fine, but make sure you don't have any larger clumps as they won't mix into the scone batter well. To make the best ever cheese scones, you want to choose your cheese carefully. We want a strong cheddar, not a more mellow like mozzarella, as it won't have any good flavour that will come through. Grate about 1.5 cups yourself. Stay away from pre-shredded for this recipe as the cheese is coated in starch so it doesn't stick together, but this just means it won't melt down well into the scone and has a bit of a weird texture. Add the cheese to the bowl and use a wooden spoon to combine the ingredients together. This is also the time you would add any extras, or you can also add them a bit later if you just want them through the centre of the scones. Once the cheese is evenly mixed through, lastly we'll need 1 cup or 250 ml of cold milk. Whole milk works best for this recipe, but you could also use any milk alternatives if you would like here. Gently fold the scone dough together with a spoon. Be really careful here not to overmix. We want to work with the scones as least as possible. This keeps them super soft. You'll probably have a pretty dry looking dough, but don't add any more milk as it will start to come together. Once it's started to form kind of in one piece, tip it out onto your work surface. You won't need any flour here as it shouldn't stick. Start to fold it over itself a few times like I'm doing here. This helps to create those layers to your scones, as well as kind of mixes the ingredients better together if you have any dry bits left behind. If you do want to add any extras through the centre, this is the best time to do it. Shape it into a really long rectangle, add your extras like feta cheese and caramelised onion to 1/2, fold the scone dough over on itself, kind of like a sandwich. If you're not adding any extras, shape it into a rectangle. It doesn't need to be precise, and cut it into 6 or 8 scones. Alternatively, you can use a cookie cutter if you want them to look a bit more uniform, but I prefer the rustic look for cheese scones, and this way is so much faster. Place the cheese scones onto a lined baking sheet, spacing them well apart as they will puff up a lot in the oven. You can see those layers that I was talking about before from folding the scone dough over on itself a few times. Use a pastry brush and brush the tops of the scones with a little milk. This helps them brown really beautifully. Alternatively, you could also use an egg wash, but the milk does a good job. And finally, top with a little extra shredded cheese. Bake the scones in a 220°C or 420°F oven for about 20 to 25 minutes, or until they've puffed up and are a deep golden brown. If you have made the scones smaller, they will need closer to 15 minutes. Let the scones cool for a few minutes on the baking sheet before transferring to a wire rack to cool completely. These scones are definitely best the day you make them, but they will keep for 3 days in an airtight container at room temperature. It's best to reheat them slightly in the oven or microwave for a few seconds to freshen them up before serving. I hope you try out these delicious cheese scones, they're honestly the best. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.